Welcome to the Airgun Extra Podcast, brought to you in association with Crackshot, the Southwest's premier airgun centre and ranges. You can check them out on their website, which is crackshot.online, and I will put a link in the show description. I'm Matt Manning, and with me today is my mate Rich Saunders. How you doing, Rich?
All right, mate. Yeah. How are you?
Good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Now we've got quite a lot to get through, but just quickly to start, I will mention the fact that we've now got an Airgun Extra Facebook page, and I'll encourage everybody to give us a follow on there. Now, the intention for that is obviously to use it to keep people up to date with what we've got going on. So little bulletins, be it video, stories on the website, articles and reviews on the website, just to share information that we think airgun shooters should know about in general. And also we've talked about having some competitions, maybe some giveaways, that kind of thing. And I know we're sort of cooking up quite a good one, hopefully, that you're going to be involved with. So, yeah, can you tell us a bit about what we might be planning on that front, Rich?
Yeah, we thought, and I know you and I have kicked this idea around an awful lot, for quite a long time. But we thought it might be fun to offer one of our listeners, viewers, the opportunity to come out shooting on one of my permissions with me, either with your own rifle or to choose one of my rifles to go out shooting. So we're thinking, and an awful lot still to be worked out yet, as you say, Matt, but we're thinking probably like a sort of a 2-day thing, a day on the range, dinner in a local pub and an overnight stay, and then the following day to go out hunting, squirrels, rats, whatever, is going to be, makes the most sense to do that. So watch this space. So we're gonna knock around a few ideas, put some information together, probably on the website, Matt, or certainly on Facebook too.
Yeah, I expect we'll use Facebook and or the website again. We'll hammer out the fine print, the small print, work out the ins and outs of it. I know we've also had a chat about maybe lining up a special gun for them to use, even if they're not familiar enough with it to use it for hunting, then to maybe have a go with it on the range. But all these things at the moment are a bit up in the air. But just to tease people that there could be a trip with Rich in the offing, and it's looking pretty likely that we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Now, usually we have a chat about what we've been up to shooting wise over the past few days, and it's going to be a little while goes on before people actually see this podcast, but most recently our shooting has revolved around being at the British shooting show, hasn't it? We've had a few days away there, caught up with a lot of people, seen lots of new kit, lots of interesting stuff. Well, I have. I know you've been busy working on stands for a lot of it. Any particular highlights in terms of the kit that you saw, Rich?
Well, the real standout, Matt, and I think I'm right in saying it was the only new rifle to be launched, if not, certainly the most significant rifle to be launched, was the new Daystate Blackwolf, which is this new modular rifle platform. It's a mechanical rifle. There are 3 different stock versions, 4 if you include the tactical stock, and there's bottle versions and cylinder versions of each one. And I was on the Daystate stand, hanging around the Daystate stand for the first couple of days. I know you did the unveiling on the first morning.
Yes, I did, for my sins.
Yeah,
and
I genuinely, I'd seen a few photographs beforehand, but it's the first time I'd seen it in the flesh, and it looks like a really tasty piece of kit. Lots of people seem to like it on the stand. There's a certain amount of buzz going around the show as well. So it'd be interesting to see what that's like when it gets out in the market. And, it's a rifle that people could buy it at the show, and an awful lot of people did. And I know there's a good supply out in the channel now. So people will be buying it hopefully now and using it. So it'd be interesting to see what the feedback is over the next few weeks and months. What did you think? Because I know you had one for a while beforehand, didn't you?
Yeah, I was very lucky that I was able to have one for a couple of weeks in the lead up to the launch. Owing to work and the weather, I didn't get an opportunity to shoot it quite as much as I would have liked, but I had a couple of proper range sessions with it and a hunting trip with it. Really, really impressed.
Which model did you have?
So I had the standard model, sub 12 177, and by by the time people see this podcast, the full video review will be up on the Airgun Extra YouTube channel, and an even more detailed review on the website airgunextra.com. So yeah, people can read about what I thought about it and how I got on with it. But just to be honest with you, very, very impressed. Obviously, it's a mechanical gun. A lot of people were probably expecting that it was another Daystate electronic.
Especially with the Wolf name in it.
Yeah, it's got the Wolf name in it. So now we've got a mechanical gun in the Wolf pack. But yeah, it gives you that level of sort of high-end Daystate refinement and tunability. Obviously, got 20-stage power wheel and FAC models. You can adjust the regulator pressure, so you've got that tunability. But it's much simpler for people that might be a little bit put off by the electronics, although the electronics are incredibly simple to use these days. The mechanical trigger, 8-point adjustable trigger, I think, from something like 8 ounces up to 3.5 pounds. Just a very, very nice trigger. So yeah, I was all round impressed with it, and testament to what a gun it is the fact that they did an incredible job of keeping it a secret. They were teasing it in the lead up to the show, but miraculously, people were turning up at the show with no idea what was going to be unveiled. Yet, after it was unveiled, obviously people could use it on the ranges, and that alone was enough to convince enough people to buy it at the show that the retailers that had it at the show ran out. I mean, that's incredible. And also, we were discussing earlier on, weren't we, just how the guns stood up on those ranges.
8 or 10 guns, 12 guns in use, on the range, and people just handling them on the stand. And I think the same 4-5 guns went all 3 days, from the start of the show to the end of the show each day, being shot on the range by all kinds of different people. And as far as I know, there wasn't a single issue with one, going a bit wonky, jamming a pellet, developing a leak. They just went on and on and on. And bearing in mind, that's the first time really that they've been used for any lengthy period of time
heavily
by regular punters. That's quite a testament to it.
It's not as straightforward as it sounds standing up to 3 days of shooting on a range, because generally on have-a-go ranges, you get people that necessarily aren't familiar with airgun shooting. They're not sympathetic with treating a gun kindly. They don't treat it maybe like they would treat their own gun. So you think, oh yeah, it's only 3 days. Actually, that's an abusive 3 days and a heavy 3 days. And it is quite exceptional to have several guns being shot like that and not have one of them go wrong.
It's got to be at least a year in the life of a regular year in the life of an air rifle. And having said that, I mean, Daystate is a premium brand. You are paying top money for their rifles, quite rightly so, in my opinion. So you would expect that. It's just good to know that they do kind of stand up to that kind of treatment. I mean, and the price is started at just under £1,800, I think, for the entry level model.
Yeah, which is a lot of money, but I think it's right for the quality of that gun. And we'll probably get onto that a bit later on, because I know we'll talk a little bit about the quality of guns and what might make a good or bad air gun. But I think for what you are getting in terms of materials, development, adaptability, it's a modular platform. It's incredibly adaptable. Exactly. That price is I believe it's right for that gun.
The same conversation with several people on the stand, where if you look at the closest rifle to it currently on the lineup is the Wolverine, and you've got the Wolverine R with a carbon bottle, and you will have the Wolverine C-type with a cylinder. Now, if you had a C-type and you really wanted a bottle gun, you'd have to buy another gun. Whereas with the Blackwolf, as I say, the cylinder and the bottle are interchangeable. So, if you want that second kind of option to your gun, you're not looking at buying a second whole new gun. You're looking at just swapping over to either a cylinder or a bottle, and you can also swap over barrels, calibers as well. So yeah, there's a lot of versatility in there. There really is several guns in one.
Like you said, it would be interesting to see how it's embraced weeks, months, years down the line. But I think it's going to be a popular gun for Daystate. And I was going to say, staying with the premium theme, did you get a chance to see the Theoben Rapid Ben Taylor edition gun?
I did briefly, and what a gorgeous piece of kit. I know they had it on the Form rifle stocks stand, and that piece of walnut was something else. And I don't know how many they're going to make of those, how available it's going to be, but I can see that being a very popular rifle.
I can. Now, in terms of the number they make, I may be wrong, but I believe that it's an original Rapid 7 stock. So they're using original. That's my understanding, that these are original stocks that are being reworked by Form. So that they're having embellishments. So they've got the rosewood embellishments, polished like a mirror.
Yeah.
Ben Taylor's signature on the base of the pistol grip. So just exquisite, and it's still got that classic, the Theoben era that we recall and love. Still looks very much that sort of gun.
Yeah, with the open trigger guard, and all. Yeah, I'm a complete sucker for a Theoben, as you know. So I can see that being a piggy bank moment in the not too distant future.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't ask how much they were likely to retail at. So
yeah.
Big piggy bank, I should think. Looking more to the future and sort of coming away from that nostalgia type of gun. Obviously, the FX DRS Tactical was also on show, and not so much a new gun as a new variant of an existing gun. Then this is a heavily tactical gun, full Arca rail, very sort of AR-15 style about it. Power up to something like 85 foot-pounds.
Wow!
But it's going to please that tactical loving customer. But you and I both know that the DRS unit as it is a blinking good air gun.
It is, and value for money as well. I'm not quite sure what the tactical rifle is retailing at, but you can pick up a standard 500mm barrel classic DRS for £750 or so, which for a rifle with the FX pedigree behind it, and fully regulated and extremely accurate as well, is tremendous value for money, and nice and light too. Rifles seem to be getting heavier and heavier, and the DRS has bucked that trend. But yeah, so have you shot the tactical yet? Have you had a chance? Because it's only announced a few days.
I should have, because I've got one here on review, and I just, to my shame, I just haven't had a chance to set it up and get out with it yet. So that is imminent. I'm not going to try and work out the dates, but it's likely to surface on the show very, very soon, if it hasn't already by the time this podcast goes out. So I've got one here. I'm looking forwards to getting to grips with it. Haven't had a chance yet. So watch this space.
So going away from the sort of the super tactical stuff to a more traditional rifle, they don't come much more traditional than Weihrauch Springers. Did you see the HW30, the new take on that?
Yes, that's the HW30 Junior, which is dinky. So they've scaled it down, smaller stock. I think it's doing something like 4 foot-pounds to make it. Obviously, it's a break barrel Springer. 4 foot-pounds to make it easier for small people to cock. It looks the absolute business. Fiber optic sights. Record trigger on there. So you've got what's regarded as one of the best trigger units in the world on a dinky junior gun. I mean, there's going to be some lucky little ones that manage to get their hands on that. But I reckon also it's going to really appeal to Weihrauch fans that just want to have to own, if not to shoot. I think I would have my work cut out trying to shoot it with my arms. But to own such an exquisite little Weihrauch, because it's got that kind of, like when you see the miniature spirit bottles, and they just look quite cool and quite desirable. It's got that kind of mini appeal about it, and I reckon some people are just going to want to add it to their collection for that very reason.
You know that there's going to be air gunners up and down the country who are going to convince themselves that they're going to get one of those for their son or their daughter. And really, and I'm sure sons and daughters will use them, and that's what they're designed for, but really, dads are buying them for themselves. And it'll be an awful lot of, let dad just show you how to do it kind of moments, I'm sure, up and down the country. But it is a beauty. And to be perfectly honest, I mean, we talk about getting youngsters into the sport, and it's an underserved part of the market really to do that. I'm involved in Reading Air Target Shooting Club, and it's very hard to get a rifle that is kid size. Really PCP wise, you're looking at something with a sliding stock. But I know BSA had the JSR, which is a nice little rifle. But it's great to see something that is kid friendly and good quality, because you also want something that kids are going to be able to learn how to shoot with, and that's going to reward them for learning how to shoot properly. You can there's plenty of cheapy small springers out there that kids will never hit a thing with, but I'm sure this new HW30 will be every bit as accurate as other HW springers, and will reward kids when they're told by mums and dads how to do it properly. So I think it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, because it is a quality piece of kit, and some people will probably try to call it out by saying it's not a first airgun price point. I think it's going to retail for about £290. So
wow,
it isn't cheap, but then a lot of spring-powered break barrel airguns that are cheap and therefore regarded as being an ideal first airgun, they're not going to be that easy to cock. Okay, this is 4 foot-pounds. So for very small children, they're going to quickly feel quite independent. They should be able to cock that themselves, obviously under close supervision. No, and also the fact that it's a quality piece of kit, as you were implying, means it should actually put pellets in the right place.
Yeah,
which is far more encouraging than having something that is really cheap but maybe not quite fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And not being rewarded for your efforts.
So what else did you come across at the show, Brett?
A bell target, going really cheap. So the Airgun Target Company, and I use their targets a lot. They're super tough, stand up to loads of abuse. So I went to have a look what they had on their stand, and a lot of people were showing a lot of interest. And this little bell target that they have, it's not the classic traditional bell target box. I suppose it's like a plate with a big tough bell behind it. But you get that gratifying ping if you score a direct hit. But also it's got like integral reducer rings on it. So maybe if you're using it for backyard shooting and you've got used to having the big kill zone, but you can't move the target further away, you can use the reducers to make the target smaller instead and keep making it more challenging and keep the shooting exciting. And I think that was retailing for about £30. So compared with a lot of the kit that we've been talking about, it's something that would be much easier to pick up at the show and not be in so much trouble when you get home. As maybe as if you bought the Blackwolf. Yeah.
and it'll last forever as well. And those things, you can keep spraying them up and what have you, but they will last an awful long time.
Yeah, no, I've been using their targets literally for years. So, like things like their pellet trap, I haven't even bothered spraying up, and I'm surprised it hasn't rusted yet. But yeah, really tough. As I've proved, you don't have to give them a great deal of maintenance, and they just keep on going. So yeah, great bit of kit. And I imagine you'd also be able to get it from their website. And in fact, worth pointing out, what I will try to remember to do is put in links to websites for the kit that we've been discussing in this podcast. I'll do my best.
I think we should also mention the guys at Crackshot for their draw. I know you and I were involved in the draw on Sunday, right at the end of the show. You probably know more about the duration of this competition, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been running for a few months now. It's a charity draw. It's ended up raising thousands of pounds for these charities, and at the same time giving some lucky winners some incredible prizes. From pre-charged air guns, optics, silencers. I thought it was an incredibly generous draw.
I know Eric said that they raised, between £5,500 and £6,000 for these two charities. And, I'm not surprised because there was air arms rifles on there. I know there's a BRK Ghost on there. There was an RM8. There was a range right providing. I can't remember whether it's a Crown or a Rexam X rifle, but there's some really, really good products on there. And I think the tickets were £10 a piece, and it was a good punt for £10 because there were literally thousands of pounds worth of gear that have been donated. Really good to see the industry coming together and getting behind one of the retailers and helping them raise some money for a good cause. And I know Eric has done this kind of stuff before. Good on them. And
definitely generous thing to do, and like I say, very generous of the industry to supply those high value prizes. And we probably owe a massive apology to everybody who didn't win a prize because we were pulling the names out the box. But try again next time, and we'll try to pull your name out of the hat next time if it happens again.
So one of the other highlights for me, Matt, was and I know you feel the same, was just that ability to be able to meet with people in person. That there'll be people listening to this that we trade emails with and comments with and what have you, that you don't get to meet. And I met 2 or 3 people that I'd had conversations via email and what have you before, but had never met in person. So it was really, really good to do that. And it's been that sort of, it kind of felt that I was meeting people that I'd known for years, although I'd never actually seen them in the flesh before. And I know Justin Green is a long-time follower of the channel, and I met him. A guy called Joe, I don't know if it's Brufton or Broughton. Met with Joe. We've been having a long chat about HW77s about him and his dad, which was great. And then another friend of the channel, who I know that Ian Woods, came along as well. Always good to catch up with him. And he had another one of his bespoke, handmade HW rifle stock projects that he showed me. And you've got to admire the guy's vision and creativity to produce these beautiful stocks. And I think the one he's working on right now is for an HW 100. And I think it's either last year or the year before he showed us one that he worked on for the HW 80, which is like laminated pieces of wood together and everything. And yeah, just really great to catch up with Ian and see his stock in development.
Yeah, and it's amazing that he brought it along as well. I mean, what a piece of kit. And also, I don't think he's got like a stock making background. No. He's literally self-taught. He's just decided, I'm going to do this. He must literally have an idea in his head and think, I'm going to deliver that.
Yeah.
I was going to say in the flesh. I'm going to deliver that in the timber. And off he goes and builds something that's like professional standard. Fair play to the bloke.
Yeah, and completely unique. So good for
absolutely
him.
Unique. Yeah,
good for him.
Fair play to him. But no, I mean that is one of the highlights is catching up with people. I wish I had more time to do it, to be quite honest with you. But yeah, just touching base with people. It's a good opportunity for us also to find out what people like, what we ought to be doing, what we aren't doing.
Yeah.
Because it's all very well for people to say, oh yeah, I like it when you do this. Like I like this about the show. Well, that's. As I always say, I stand and listen to that all day long. But what's really useful is when people say, "Oh, maybe you could consider this, maybe try that." And it's nice to get that feedback.
Yeah. I got a bit of that as well, which is always useful to know. And people are always so appreciative of the stuff that we do, which is nice. But as you say, it's nice to know that this is good. What would have been better is this. That's what I really take away from these things.
Yeah, and also hearing their stories, like the stock, but just hearing the kind of shooting that other people are doing, the kind of kit that they're using, where they are on their journey. In fact, do you remember the lad Lewis that got in touch about he wanted an affordable thermal? He caught up with me on the Daystate stand. So young shooter chasing you and I to find out what would be a good affordable thermal spotter. Coincided very nicely with you doing a group test for the website. So we had a bit of substance that we could actually sort of say, have a look at this. We've answered a few of your questions. He'd gone ahead and got himself do you know what? I can't blink and remember what he got himself now. But anyway, he was over the moon with it. And took the time to say, thanks for helping me make that choice. And that to me, to think that I'm helping somebody, especially a young shooter, on their shooting journey, and hopefully helping him to save some money and get a decent piece of kit while he's at it is great.
I spent the Sunday on the Scott Country stand talking to people about IR products, and I think it's one of the areas that's not only advanced the most in the last 5 years, less than 5 years. Yeah, probably as a consequence of that, it's one of the areas that a lot of people are more confused about and sought out opinion and guidance about. So it's really good to chat to people and help them decide what kind of IR product or night vision product they wanted, by talking about the kind of shooting that they do and what have you. So it was really nice to have those more in-depth conversations with folks about genuine shooting issues that they're, product questions that they have in their minds. And
it was
a few quid.
Well done. I'm sure Scott Country will thank you for that. But also, sometimes you help them not to spend too much, because you can kind of say to them, well, maybe you don't need quite what you think you need. But anyway, I guess that's probably a fair chunk of time spent on the British Shooting Show, and we could probably talk about it for another hour. But we'll move on to our Q&A section now, and that is in association with Anglia Tackle and Gun. They stock a huge range of air guns, optics, ammo and accessories. You can visit their website, that's angliatackleandgun.co.uk, and in fact they have given us a discount code. You can save 5% on online purchases from them if you use the code Airgun Extra, all one word. I don't think it's case sensitive. Again, I'll pop it in the show description. So that's 5% discount code Airgun Extra. Right, into the questions, Rich. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so this is a question that we received on email, but it's also kind of reflective of kinds of questions that I was asked in many different ways at the show, funny enough. So the question is, are there any bad air guns out there right now? And what is there to differentiate a good air gun from a bad air gun today? What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. Where to start? I mean, price comes into it enormously, and I think it's easy to give unfair flack to what are perceived to be overly expensive air guns. Funny enough, I've had somebody commenting today, but and fair comment, talking about the price. Let's say is a £2,000 air gun twice as good as a £1,000 air gun? Now, my argument or my answer to that would be, it isn't necessarily twice as accurate, but the joy of owning that gun, coupled with its superior performance, justifies that additional cost, because you've got more advanced materials, design, manufacture. These things stack up the price. It's like buying a car, and I think that the line I used was something along the lines of, a £20,000 car probably won't get you somewhere much better than a £10,000 car would have done, but paying double the price buys you a different kind of refinement, maybe pride of ownership. So that's, I think, one thing that in some people's eyes can make a bad air gun is the fact that it's overpriced, but that's very subjective. And I think also in this day and age, because of the amount of comeback that people have through social media, you can't necessarily make an air gun that isn't worth what it costs, because you wouldn't get away with it. if a very expensive airgun wasn't very good, people would be calling it out so quickly and so thoroughly on Facebook and all the other social media. People would stop buying it. So to me, everything is worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it. And then at the other end of the scale, it's unreasonable to think that a £150 airgun is going to compete with a £700 airgun. But by and large nowadays, because of the market pressure and people have got so much choice, chances are if you spend £150 on an airgun, you'll get your £150 money's worth out of it, and so on and so forth. And the increments of improvement become smaller the more you spend, because you can't, there isn't so far to go in terms of making a better airgun. In terms of the actual factors for me which make for a bad airgun, the first one that springs to mind without you really having to think about it is the trigger. I think you can have an airgun on which everything is brilliant, but if the one exception is the trigger, and that trigger is not crisp and predictable, it's very difficult to release shots in a measured way, and that affects accuracy. You can have some very cheap or relatively cheap airguns, but as long as they haven't skimped too much on the trigger, if muzzle velocity is relatively consistent and the barrel's fairly secure, then that pellet is likely to travel in the same path every time. And if you're not yanking it here, there, and everywhere with the trigger, it's likely to be accurate. I've probably gone down about half a dozen different tangents there, but anything to add to that question from you, Rich?
I think it comes down to, what do you want an airgun for? If you want an air rifle to shoot in the garden at tin cans and little chalkmen and what have you over 10 or 15 yards, then a £100 airgun is probably going to be good for that purpose. Obviously, if you're planning to go out and shoot live quarry, then it isn't. But I think that's sort of quite an easy sort of example to give. I think that the more nuanced argument is, what do we actually mean by good? Because if someone's barometer for good is it'll put pellets within a 10p piece at 25 yards, then over only a few £100, there are very, very few airguns that won't do that. And I see this on the range at Reading Air Target Shooting quite a lot, where there are people down there with sort of £400 or £500 PCPs who are shooting groups pretty much as good as people with £1,500, £2,000 PCPs. Now, if that is your arbiter of good, then there's lots of good rifles out there. When you start adding in factors like, what does it feel like to shoot? How good is the engineering? How good is the sort of the mechanical interaction, the shoulder fit, and the whole experience of shooting a rifle? Then that's an awful lot more subjective. And I would say, that it's one of the people. I often get people saying to me, I'm thinking of buying this rifle, or this rifle, and they're three very good, very similar priced rifles, and they're all good. And it really is one of those situations where you can let your heart rule your head, because it doesn't. There's no bad decision. It comes down to which one do you want, which one really appeals to you the most, because they'll probably all do the same thing.
And it's always worth picking them up as well, isn't it, Rich? I mean, this is another thing I try to stress to people is if you're reading or watching our reviews, take that as a guide. Yeah. But if you get the opportunity at a club, or if the shop is good enough that it can let you put some shots through a gun, please try it for yourself. And if you're not able to put shots through it, at the very least, try to put it into your shoulder, because I'm over 6 feet tall. I was talking about, I couldn't dream of shooting that little Weihrauch. Shorter people wouldn't get on with some of the guns that I get on well with. It doesn't even come down necessarily to your size. Some guns just feel right. Yeah. Some guns don't. And quite often, it's like you were saying, it's not necessarily a good gun or a bad gun. It might just be the wrong gun. It's a bit like buying a Formula One car to do the school run. You won't have room for the kids, and you're going to probably end up upside down at the first roundabout. So, and I think, and you were talking about people's barometers for what makes a good gun. for some people, that barometer might be all it needs to be a good air gun is less than 200 pounds.
Yeah.
For other people to be a good air gun, it might be pellet on pellet at 50 meters. Now, I think by the time this podcast out, people will have seen on the main show, I've got a rat shooting episode that I'm using the Corral Puncher K, which I think, well, it's easily sub 400 pounds. Yeah. But for ratting, it does everything I need it to do. It was snuffing out every rat I pointed it at over those ratting ranges. Now, in the same episode, I'm reviewing the Daystate Blackwolf, which in those circumstances couldn't have done any more than the Corral Puncher K. However, you're going to suddenly justify spending 4 or 5 times as much on the Blackwolf if you want to be shooting with consistent precision at 60 meters. So it is all down to what are you going to be using it for? What's the right gun? What's the wrong gun? It's not necessarily that one's bad and one's better than that.
And that's why events like the British Shooting Show are so good, because you can. I don't know how many manufacturers had their own range at the show. It seemed like just about everyone who was showing a gun had those guns on the range, so you could literally spend a day shooting just about every single gun available on the market. Putting your shoulder to it and forming that opinion. And as I say, sometimes the gun kind of picks you rather than you pick the gun. And it's only by using them, putting them in your shoulder and putting the trigger that you find that out. So, Matt, I got another question from a young lad called Ben Carter, who asks, and he's obviously seen our videos doing squirrel control, and he's asked, is stalking squirrels a worthwhile and effective means of squirrel control? And I guess he means in comparison to hides.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's worthwhile, because if when you leave the woods there's one less there than when you arrived, you've done a worthwhile job. I would say it's not the most effective, not the most efficient way. I mean, if I had the luxury of time, I'd love to just wander the woods, roving around stalking squirrels with an air rifle. I might even indulge myself in using a spring-powered air rifle. However, because I'm usually up against it with family, work, and juggling everything else with my shooting time, and the expectations of landowners who want those woods, the conditions for the trees, the wildlife that the woods support, improved as much as possible, as quickly as possible, stalking grey squirrels is not the most efficient way to do it. No, I would, as we've talked about so many times before, I'd use a bait station. I'd more than likely use peanuts. I'd get the squirrels queuing up for those peanuts. I'd shoot from a hide, and I would expect to make, let's say for comparison, if it's circumstances where I might shoot 2 or 3 half a day roving, I reckon I would shoot 12 or 14 3 hours in the hide. So horses for courses. It's worthwhile, but in my opinion, not the most efficient, effective way to do it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of it comes down to recognizing that there's more to shooting than simply putting lots of things in a game bag. And as you say, sitting in a hide is, without, I don't think anyone would argue that it's against it being the most effective way of putting most squirrels on the floor. But you are static and you're limited to your view out of your hide. Whereas if you are roving and you don't have those pressures of a landowner or time or what have you, if you are doing it for the thrill of the hunt and being outside, nothing beats walking around with a rifle over your shoulder. And recognizing that, right, you might not even get a shot that day, or you might get 1 or 2 if you're lucky. But you know what? Sometimes that's only a part of the day. And I would say, again, it comes down to what your objective is. If you have to, or kill lots of squirrels, reduce lots of squirrels in an area, then the hide's got to be the way about it. If you're hunting for yourself, there's nothing beats roving, I don't think. And the same really for rabbits as well. Most of my rabbit control is ambushing or from a truck. Not the most fun way or the most engaging way of doing it. There's an awful lot of time. There's only so long I can lay on my belly on a wet field. But walking along, stalking along a hedgerow on a summer's evening, where you're really pitting your fieldcraft skills against a rabbit, is far more challenging and enjoyable, but ultimately less productive. It comes down to what you want to get out of it, I think. But it's a good question, though.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So, and particularly, like you say, with rabbits, the satisfaction of that sort of one-on-one, pitting your wits against its instincts. If you bag one stalking in that way, it's worth 10 off of the bipod. But again, it's often down to time and satisfying the landowner's needs for control and reduction of whatever damage that pest is causing, which actually leads us on quite nicely to the next question. Are there any scenarios in which you would not shoot quarry when it is legal to do so? What's your line on that, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a personal mantra that says that a pest is only a pest when it's being a pest. And I know the general license has tightened up quite rightly a lot of the conditions under which we can shoot species on a quarry list for certain scenarios, with birds in particular. But I know people who routinely shoot squirrels in their garden, and I've got nothing against that. There may be good reasons for doing that. Personally, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't shoot. If I have a rabbit come in the garden, I wouldn't shoot that rabbit because squirrels don't cause a huge amount of problems for me in my garden. I've also got permissions that I shoot rats on, some stables that I shoot I shoot a lot of rats on, and the fields are awash with rabbits. But they're in fields where the horses don't get put out, so they're doing absolutely no harm to anyone whatsoever. So I leave them alone. Jays is another thing. I shoot in woods where there are an awful lot of jays, but I know that the woods that they're in, there may well be some protected woodland bird species in there. I don't know that. So, not only would it be illegal for me to shoot them, but there's not that many jays around. I think they're really handsome birds. And unless there's a very good reason, a legal reason for shooting jays, by and large, I leave them alone as well. So, there are lots of reasons, when I won't shoot quarry. I think there's a fine line between, when you are tasked with, as far as you can, eradicating every single rabbit from some paddocks or something. Kind of shoot as many as you can, sort of thing. But by and large, unless there's a good reason for me to shoot something, then I won't do that. And a good reason could be, protecting livestock, horses, what have you. And it could also be equally being providing food for myself, and I quite like food, and also for the bird of prey centre that I supply as well. That's a good reason as far as I'm concerned. Quite a few reasons why I wouldn't shoot something. How does that sit with you, Matt?
Much the same, and I think if you're leaning into the realms of killing something simply because you could, you might have a few questions to ask yourself. But I would probably shoot grey squirrels in any circumstances where I had permission, if it was safe. If it was safe to shoot them in the garden, I would introduce species. It is, even if on the face of it, it isn't causing me problems, it's still a species that's going to have some negative impact for some wildlife in that vicinity. I don't or often shoot them in the garden, like I say, for the simple fact it isn't usually safe to do so. But like you, is always, especially with when you're dealing with native species, always case by case. Jays, as you've said, a really good case in point. Quite a few of the woods where I shoot do have red-listed songbirds nesting in them, and I would have no trouble proving that. But the landowner doesn't want jays shot there, and they are correct, because there aren't many jays in those woods. It's a native species, and they are here for a reason. Same with magpies. people often try to vilify jays and magpies like they're evil creatures that are behaving of their own free will and going out with an agenda to cause trouble. Now, obviously, even grey squirrels aren't doing that. All they are doing is existing.
Yeah.
And in certain circumstances, there become too many of them, and their actions have a negative impact. And I'm going back now to the native species. I say grey squirrels. For me, if I shot the last one in the UK, I'd be pleased with myself. But for native species, they have a purpose. They're not stealing chicks and eggs. Your jays and your magpies aren't stealing chicks and eggs out of spite. They're doing it so as not to die and to prevent their young from dying. And if you think about that makes human beings look pretty bad, because we eat meat for fun. We don't have to eat meat. I love eating meat. I'm a meat eater. I wouldn't die if I stopped eating meat. A magpie, a jay would. So I think you have to take out any assumption that it's wicked. It's just in some circumstances, the numbers and the impact that they are having on what's going on around them justifies culling, thinning them out. So yeah, that's how I sort of tend to look at it. Is I'm not a goodie versus a baddie. It's just that in certain instances, the numbers need to be managed, and as an airgun shooter who shoots live quarry, I can provide a service to hopefully improve the situation. And I say either in a measured way, if that's the best way to do it, or if it's grey squirrel control, then in the most ruthless and effective way. But humane, and again, that's a top priority. That it's swift and humane, whatever I'm shooting, even if it's rats. But yeah, lots of situations when legally I could shoot quarry species, but I don't. And yeah, most often that will be in the garden. Don't tend to shoot wood pigeons in the garden because they don't cause any serious problems. But yeah, it's always case by case.
And I think the whole, and I don't want to get into the whole general license debate, but when we had that confusion, a couple of years or so ago now, the whole situation was poorly managed. But I think at the heart, it was making a good point, because the GL general licenses were set up to clarify when you could or couldn't shoot a particular species, and over time, it had kind of morphed into a situation where people thought, if it's on a list, I can kill it. And I think the whole clarification on the GL general licenses just clarify for people that no, just because you can shoot a pigeon, it doesn't mean that you should shoot a pigeon. You should shoot a pigeon under these specific circumstances. So, which I thought was a good lesson for people to remind themselves of ultimately.
Definitely, and I think it was a good lesson in stopping and thinking. Personally, again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I'll be in there forevermore, but I think it's too restrictive in the instance that if you know they are causing damage or a problem or what have you, too restrictive in the circumstances in which you can control them and the alternatives that you have to employ first. I mean, I think if you've got, for instance, and do stick to the terms of the general license, because I do, but it frustrates me that you maybe have got a crop that's been hammered by pigeons, and then maybe it's a grey area shooting those pigeons at the roost when they're flighting back in the evening, because technically they're not causing crop damage, but you know that when they wake up, they will be. So I think in some ways it's too restrictive, but to get back to the original point, people should be stopping and thinking about why they are shooting what they are shooting.
Couldn't agree more.
And there are certain instances when legally you could, and realistically you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right. The next one I've got. Right. Other than the essentials, so like your rifle, scope, and pellets, what kit do you always take with you when you're hunting?
So, I mean, increasingly over the last few years, my thermal comes with me all the time. Day and night shooting. I even if I'm sat in a hide, I take my thermal spotter with me, because it's just become as essential to me as my rifle, to be perfectly honest. And there's the usual things like knives and a ball of string and things like that make their way into my rucksack. And years ago, it did seem a lot simpler. So literally pellets in my jeans pocket and my gun over my shoulder, and that was it. I tell you one thing that if I forget it, then it makes my evening shooting worse. So I carry around plastic bags, like Ziploc plastic bags, and everything I shoot goes into a plastic bag and then goes in my game bag or into a crate in the back of the truck, just to sort of keep everything neat and tidy. It all goes off to the bird of prey center. And if you shoot a dozen rabbits in a night, that can get pretty kind of mucky by the end of the night if I don't take those plastic bags. So that's quite an important thing. And by the same kind of thing, I take with me now a game carrier. One of these like there's a leather thongs with rings on that you can put a dozen squirrels, a dozen rabbits through and carry that along. Yes, as I'm sure you've done it, mate. It's really to carry 3 rabbits in your hand across a field with your gun and your sticks and all the rest of it. It's hard work. So yeah, my game carrier is something that I wouldn't be without, to be perfectly honest. So my game carrier, my placky bags, and my thermal would be the 3 sort of. Oh, and my flask.
Yeah.
Take a flask, especially this time of year. I take my flask with me all the time. How about you?
Like you, increasingly thermal, more so for night shooting. I'm still not too dependent on it for day shooting, though I don't doubt that I'd probably do better if I were. For me, the big one is probably gun support, which reminds me, actually, quickly talking about the website, airgunextra.com. Recently, on YouTube, I did a piece about various pieces of kit for gun support, and I looked more at the kit. Now, on the article on the website, I've gone into more detail about how I use that equipment. So bipod, various tripods, etc. So yeah, that's on airgunextra.com. And while I'm talking about the website, Rich's group test for thermal spotters is on there, and another group test for binoculars for shooting. Back to the point. Yeah, gun support for me, because I'm a really average shot. Back to that humane pest control. I certainly don't think gun support is cheating when you're shooting live quarry. I think it's giving yourself the best possible chance of always delivering clean kills. For me, it's usually the trigger stick Gen 3 because it's fairly light to carry around. It's versatile. You've got almost sort of infinite angles that you can aim off of it. Otherwise, more so in the summer when I'm ambushing rabbits, it will be a bipod. What else? A beanbag seat. My little beanbag seat that's almost always clipped to my backpack. On the odd occasion that I forget that, I really miss it because I do a lot of static shooting and a lot of sit and wait. Even if I'm not hide shooting, I'll usually find somewhere where I expect it to be productive and I'll sit down. So yeah, for comfort, dryness, and just a stable platform to sit on, my little beanbag seat, and even a pair of gloves. In the summer, it tends to, a couple of things. You can see how white my hands are now. They're like flags. So I think from a camouflage point of view, we're always thinking about what we're camoing up, and a lot of people don't wear gloves. Well, for me, that white flag movement there needs covering up. So I almost always wear gloves for that reason. They keep my hands a little bit warmer in the winter, and they keep biting flies off of them in the summer. And I think I've said to you before, I usually wear wet gloves. You can feel through them. They're nice and grippy. Back in the day, I always used to cut the index finger off of my gloves so I could feel what I was doing with the trigger. But with McWets, I tend to be able to feel my way through them. So yeah, for me, gun support, beanbag seat, gloves, probably be other things that would spring to mind if I thought about it for long enough. But they're things that I find very useful, other than the obvious things, like you say, like your penknife. And
it's always worth noting as well that there's pros and cons, but take your mobile phone with you, because if you do fall off a gate, fall off a fence, twist an ankle or something, middle of the woods, even if you're only a mile away from somewhere, can be a lonely place without a phone. So I always take a phone with me just in case.
Yeah, good call. And I've talked about that in the past, and people are like, oh, you wuss, you should, you should go hardcore and go without a phone and not worry about contact with the outside world. But I tell you what, if you did come a cropper, you'd be so glad to have it. For whatever reason, twisted ankle, hypothermia, you name it. I mean, I've been on the brink of hypothermia, not for a very long time, but as a kid. And yeah, you don't want to be stuck in those circumstances.
And also, and a couple of times I've been out on permissions, especially at night, and I've seen things going on. People that shouldn't be on a farm, and I know they shouldn't be there. And I've been able to make a phone call to the farm manager or something, and that has put me in really good stead with my
really good point. Really good point. And on one of my ratting permissions, I am forever phoning the farmer to tell him that his calves are out. They don't go very far because they don't want to stray. I guess they don't want to stray from the rest of the herd. So this time of year when they're in pens, they'll get out and they'll be roaming around the farm, but they won't go far because there's food and there's company.
Yeah.
So he's quite blasé about it, but he appreciates me tipping him off when they have managed to get between the rails and they're enjoying the freedom of the yard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I reckon that just about takes us to the end of it for this one, Rich. So thanks for your time. Thanks again to Crackshot, which is based in Newton Abbot, and Anglia Tackle and Gun in Norwich. You can catch up with both of them on their websites and also on Facebook. And again, I will post their web links on the description. Remember also that 5% discount code that we've got for Anglia Tackle and Gun. Do check out our Airgun Extra Facebook page too. Like I say, there will be competitions looming in the not too distant future. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, and we will be back again with another podcast in a few more weeks' time. Cheers.
Bye-bye.